are going to be turning over as a result of term limits. And based on what voters do, the voice of that commission, this decision-making body that makes choices on behalf of the future of our community and so many issues of our quality of life, they will be shaped by what voters do this season. And so we're so glad that people are taking the time to become informed and engaged and to make choices that really echo the values of our community at large. I also want to take the moment to thank outgoing Commissioner Bovo for many things, but in particular for his advocacy and championing of the completion of the census. And if you are tuning into this, caring about the future of Miami, and you have not yet taken the time to fill out your census, I implore you to open up another browser and to take the 10 minutes to fill out that census. It will only take you a few minutes, but we will reap the rewards in Miami for a decade. And with that, I want to remind everyone that this is not a debate. This is a forum. This is an opportunity for us to really get to know the candidates and who they are, what they stand for, what they value. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about them and to seeing people turn out this season to vote for great leadership in Miami. And with that, I'm excited to pass over the mic to our host for this afternoon, our moderator, Jackie Nesbrell. Thank you so much.
Everything's fine. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. We can't hear you. Go ahead. She said you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jackie Nesbrell. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. On behalf of the Miami Foundation and NBC6, it is our pleasure to be here for our Miami, the People's Forum. This is really an opportunity for the community to get to know the candidates for District 13. So without further ado, let's introduce those two candidates. They are former State Senator Rene Garcia and Adrian Jesus Jimenez. We thank the candidates for joining us here today. Good afternoon. So let's start with some housekeeping here. Let's talk about some of the rules for this forum. First of all, there will be no opening remarks. And the candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each of the questions directed to you. Each of you will have 30 seconds to respond to or rebut a specific comment made by your opponent when signaled. And each candidate will be given 90 seconds at the end of the forum for closing remarks. So are you ready? Ready? Okay.
Yep.
So my first question is for Adrian. And of course, we're talking about COVID-19 because this has really changed every facet of our lives for the past 3 months. And we have been seeing the increasing numbers of COVID-19 positive cases, not only in the country and in Florida, but specifically here in South Florida. So if you were elected as a county commissioner, what post-COVID changes or initiatives would you put forth to ensure your district comes back stronger and more resilient to crises such as the coronavirus? Adrian?
To begin with, thank you everybody for having me. But in regards to COVID, I think that's a current situation that we've all felt very close. A lot of loved ones are currently unemployed, and it had a great impact on our economy. Now, we have to get the economy back and rolling because yes, this is a thing that affects everyone. And the economy in itself is affecting a lot of people's lives. I've spoken with countless of our constituents who are telling me that they haven't paid their monthly bills on their homes for months. They haven't paid their water bill. They haven't paid their electric bill. That being said, we need to make sure we don't fall into another lockdown situation or where we have to impose another curfew. And in order to do this, we need to be a lot stricter on wearing face masks. We need to be a lot stricter on restaurants who are not abiding by like CDC guidelines. We need to make sure that the procedures are being followed. If not, we're not going to control this. We're going to continue to have spikes, and when these spikes happen, the government's going to react by locking things down or causing curfews. So we need to make sure we all take personal responsibility and wear our face masks to make sure that we're reducing spread.
Renee, what would you do so that your district can come back stronger and resilient after coronavirus?
Jackie, the after is, we don't know when that after is going to be. I think the after, we have to wait for the vaccine. But until that vaccine comes out, we definitely have to put an emphasis and a focus on public health. What has happened for far too long in this community is that we haven't been paying attention to public health. We see that the indicators, a lot of our health indicators are dismal compared to the rest of the county and not compared to the rest of the state. You know, our infant mortality rates, you know, we see that we're #1 in new HIV cases, which is totally unacceptable. We look at childhood obesity, those types of issues we need to start addressing. And while we have one of the best healthcare providers in our community, which is Jackson, we need to start utilizing Jackson Memorial Hospital in a different manner than just be a center, a hospital hub. We need to make sure we go out into the community, use the different healthcare partners that we have, use the Department of Health to ensure that we educate our community on taking better care of themselves. Use the FQHCs. Those are the way that we connect the system in a way where everyone has access. That'll be a way that we can better the lives of our residents in our community and better the healthcare outcomes. By bettering the healthcare outcomes of our community, you'll better everything. You'll better the education, you'll better the economy, and you better the quality of life for our community. And that's, I think it's one of the important ways, and one of the things that we can do is ensuring that we have a stronger and more robust public health system in the county.
Okay, my next question is for you because you talk about the betterment of the residents in your district. How can you ensure that all residents have basic needs? Like right now, many people are hungry, many people are unemployed, so that they have food and access to medical treatment and testing during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I address that to you now, Renee.
Well, Jackie, one of the things that we did here in Hialeah, after one of the local hospitals was charging $150 for a test, we went out and we contracted with a local local testing lab, to ensure that they were giving out free testing in the city of Hialeah. That we opened up that testing center at Amelia Earhart Park, thanks to our partners at the county, Commissioner Steve Bogle, and some of our state legislators. We worked together to make sure we had that center there. But in order to continue to better this community and have access to food, you know, it sounds so easy when I say something, but it's through education. We have to make sure we educate our electorate, we make sure I educate our residents as to where the services rely. The use of the federally qualified health centers is an extremely important part of ensuring that we have a robust system where people have access not only to medical treatment, but have access to the services. Use our non-for-profits in this community. Far too often our non-for-profits kind of fight with each other for resources. I think we should have a system where there's better communication and integration, where we can really go out into the communities, those communities that are underserved, to ensure that they have representation in their backyard. Those are the things that I think we can do.
Adrian, how would you get basic needs to the residents of District 13 and the medical needs?
Well, I think it all starts with kind of like Renee was saying, working with close organizations, nonprofits. The issue with that also is who we are working with. A lot of times these nonprofits could be working on, not necessarily on our best interests as the constituents, which can sometimes be the case. So we need to make sure that this process is also transparent and where people can see where their taxpayer dollars are also being going and sorted to programs just like this. But we do need to make sure that people have basic needs like access to to food, water. Like I said, I've been speaking with countless constituents. A lot of them are telling me that they've only received the $1,200 from the stimulus package and the $275 from food stamps. Many of them are still not receiving their unemployment checks. So it really ultimately comes, we can try to do as much as we can on the county level by working with hospitals kind of like Jackson, working with other hospitals like seeing if they would be willing to offer more services. But once again, we need to see what service we're paying for, because it might not be quality service. I have a friend of mine who's currently under lockdown because her mother was diagnosed with COVID. However, there were issues in the testing, and she's had to go back now twice for testing, and they can't find her results. So now she has to go back again. And there's a possibility it could have been a misdiagnosis based on the spelling. So so we need to make sure that we're also paying for the right services and not just wasting taxpayer dollars.
Okay, I think it's safe to say that many of us are concerned with transportation and transit in our county. And across, especially in Miami-Dade, public transit systems are experiencing massive ridership and budgetary losses due to coronavirus. What is your plan to ensure that Miami-Dade transit bounces back in a positive and in robust way? Adriana, I'll start with you.
So I think that kind of begins by prioritizing our public transportation, which is something that is often minimalized. Personally, myself, I've been lucky enough to always have a vehicle or have a private transportation. So this isn't an issue that I was directly familiar with. This is something that by reviewing information from a Miami Riders Alliance, some unions like that are nonprofit organizations that are really doing big work on this, because this is an issue that, although I didn't know myself was a big thing, I've talked with so many of our constituents, and they tell me on the daily, even when the curfew happened a short back, that they couldn't, that they had locked down due to the protests. Many people couldn't even go get daily medication or food, which just shows you the impact it has on a percentage of our population. So I think this is something that shouldn't be afterthought. I think this needs to be key policy. We need to work with the local community and find out how we can ease them, not just bring in also, like we said, experts, because experts might have a design, but that design doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So we need to make sure that we bring in the constituents and we involve them in the decisions in regards to public transportation, and that we really put a priority on this to make sure that we don't just let it go default.
But it is a priority. So Renee, what would you do to ensure that Miami-Dade Transit comes back strong?
I appreciate you repeating the question, because we froze there for a minute. Jackie, first, for Miami-Dade Transit to come back strong, I think we have to have a mass transportation system in place that takes care of all the county. I think what's happened with transportation issues throughout the years in this community is that we've pinned one community against another, one corridor against the other. And I understand the importance of every county commissioner fighting for their district and making sure that they get the resources there. But we need to have one plan for this county, a plan that takes care of the north, takes care of the south, the east, and the west. I think I'm a little frustrated from the time that we were in Tallahassee when we see a piecemeal approach to transportation. And we see that piecemeal approach to transportation even in Washington, D.C. When we've had leadership up in Washington who were able to bring millions of dollars into this community on transportation, we couldn't get our act together. And I think it's important, in order to have a robust system, it has to include a system, a mass transportation system that just does not include buses. I think it's a system that has to include some form of rail. And I agree, we need to include the local communities so they can try to link local communities and build up their local transportation projects and incorporate those into the greater scheme and the greater plan of the Miami-Dade transit system.
So you talk about buses and rail. What other transportation options would you suggest for District 13? Because right now, as it stands, do you believe that there are enough options for the residents of District 13 in terms of mass transit?
I'll tell you this, Jackie, here in District 13, in Northwest Dade, between what you have the local transportation of Miami Lakes and in Hialeah, people are able to get around, you know, because they have those systems. This is why it's having systems incorporated and tied into the county system. There, we can do better. The biggest problem that we have in the Northwest Quadrant is right now the express lanes that we have on the Palmetto. Those express lanes have caused a huge backup and a backlog, I guess, traffic congestion in the mornings. Now you don't see as much of the traffic congestion because of COVID. That's what the only good thing that has come about from COVID. I don't try to make a joke of it, but it's just the reality. But we have to find a way. First of all, we have to eliminate those express lanes that we have there, and then really just continue to build off the system that we have. I don't think that we should exclude District 13. District 13 needs to be part of a greater plan that incorporates all the districts and all the communities in our county.
Adrian, do you think that the residents of District 13 have enough options in terms of mass transit? And do you agree with Renee that those lanes on the Palmetto Expressway should not be there? They should be removed.
In regards to that, yeah, those express lanes need to be gone. Anyone who's driven there consistently knows that before those express lanes were actually installed, there was one lane completely blocked off and traffic was actually fairly smooth until they started actually building the express lane. So that express lane needs to go. I actually have an idea for that, which is do exactly what they did with 836 and add an express lane for buses. And then maybe we can also offer more bus services up here, up north and northwest Dade. I know we're currently building that bus station, but yeah, District 13 has really not had, at least Northwest District 13 hasn't really had too much access to public transportation. And we do have a lot of folks up here who make that daily commute down to downtown. But not even just them. We have the folks over in Hialeah who, for the most part, have to deal with how long for bus rides, how many buses that don't make their route because they break down. So yeah, we do need to make sure that this is a lot more available to our district. Because like I said, our people are desperately in need of improvements, and it's not as available as it should be. And Miami shouldn't require you to have a car to live.
Do you have any specific suggestions other than the busing right now in District 13?
So it's like I said, I think we need to add more. I believe we need to get just in general more buses on the road. I know that's a big project, but that's something that if we really prioritize, that is something we can do as a county. I also think we need to switch out that Palmetto Express lane and do it as an express lane for buses, because we can't do monorail instant. We already know that's an expensive route. Buses is more of a intermediate term, and as the county starts prioritizing this more and we start doing the shifts that need to be done, then we can start doing more aggressive approaches like monorail, stuff like that.
Okay, I want to move on to parks and open spaces in the district. Very important, especially right now. There's research that demonstrates that visiting these spaces reduces stress and improves overall health. So as a commissioner, how do you plan to ensure safe access to parks and open spaces in your district? So I begin with you, Adrian.
So that's a big thing. I've practically lived my entire life in District 13, so I've known the inaccessibility and the limitedness of the parks that we have at hand. I think this ultimately kind of ties in hand also with even a traffic issue. We should start zoning some more large pieces of land for parks, and we should try getting the county to purchase some of these large mass lands back. Because a lot of times the people in these communities are already complaining of traffic. So why end up selling this property over to real estate that's just going to add a bigger influx to the local traffic? These big, large lots of land can be, the county could try to purchase some of these back and start developing more county parks, and also maybe even trying to prioritize the parks that we have and also adding more services. We have a lot of folks in our community that have special needs. If you didn't know, it's pretty darn hard to go to a park if you have a kid with special needs. This needs to be kind of more readily accessible. You don't know how many countless people I've spoken to that say yeah, I can't go to the park because either this is an issue or I can't have my kid in the sun too long, he overheats, things like this. And our parks should be
Yes.
more than adequately funded considering we're in Miami-Dade and I've seen the differences from park to park. The
We're
closest
gonna
park
talk
to my
about,
own home has literally just one set, just a playground, and that's it.
we're
Not
gonna talk
even one.
about funding, Adriana. I'm gonna have to interrupt you because the time is up. And I'm going to pose this question to Renee. How do you ensure safe access to parks and open spaces in District 13?
Look, we have Amelia Earhart Park, we have Norma Jean Park in PSN, and we have a couple of parks in that are county parks in Miami Lakes. You also have the city parks. I'm a product of the city park system here in Hialeah, which is a city system, not the county system. But again, I think it's important to ensure that the city and the counties work together to ensure we have a robust system, a robust park system that are not open just in the mornings or in the afternoons. We should have parks that are open, from early in the morning to in the evening, so children and adults have a place to go. And it's not just having a park that is open, having a park that is open and it's well lit. That is the key, well lit and taken care of. And those are the things, if we can go back to a system, I hate to sound so old when I say this, but when we can go back to a time when I was growing up that we had those robust parks, I think that'll make the difference. And that's something that I think it's part of my campaign to ensure that we do have a place where children and adults can enjoy the outdoors and stay healthy.
Well, you mentioned well-lit and taking care of those parks, and for that, it takes money. So is there enough money to maintain the parks right now? And would you support a bond referendum to better fund the parks in a post-pandemic Miami-Dade?
Jackie, it depends on what the referendum reads. It's always easy to say, yes, I'll support a referendum or no, but just the devil is always in the detail. And we have to be careful on how those referendum reads, because I've seen a lot of referendums that have come through the voters, and that money has not been spent the way that we were promised. And one is a perfect example, is a half penny tax. So we have to be careful. I will look at it and make sure that if we do, the monies go directly and solely to the expansion and maintenance of parks, to ensure that we don't supplant dollars, or the dollars are taken away from the actual system to go somewhere else. If it's something to grow, absolutely, we can talk about that. But that we have to be careful when we talk about straight blanket, a referendum on the parks. We can do a better job with the monies that we have right now.
Adrian, do you think the county spends enough money on the parks? And would you support a referendum to better fund the parks?
It's kind of like Renee was saying, in regards to referendum, everything is nothing's ever just black and white. There's a lot of gray details in there that might not benefit the taxpayer. What I do think is, I don't believe we do spend enough money on the parks. I'm pretty sure a lot of the county money is allocated to other places that could be shifted. And I'm also a big believer that these plans, or whether it's a referendum or whatever it be, we need to make sure that the taxpayer has adequate resources to be able to find out these numbers. Where is this money going, and how is it being paid? To whom it's being paid? At the end of the day, this is our government, and we have a right to know to the dot where our government is spending this money. So we should know if we're either A, overpaying for contractors, or B, overpaying for maintenance. We need to know this information. And I also believe a lot of things can be resolved also with, for example, kind of like a public bid. We can offer public bidding to do the construction on these parks, to modify them, and let the construction companies outbid each other for the ability to construct, not just simply go with the contractors that have typically been used amongst the system. And I think that's ultimately where you can correct a lot of budgeting issues if we allow more transparency with how all the money is being spent and with whom we're negotiating.
Okay, I want to switch gears now, because with the death of George Floyd and the protests that ensued, and especially here in Florida and in South Florida, we need to talk about criminal justice reform. So as county commissioner, will you support establishing and funding the proposed civilian police oversight panel? Renee, I address this to you first.
Jackie, as long as we have a community panel that incorporates and has all aspects of our community on there, I'm okay with it. Look, what happened to George Floyd it's just disgusting. There's no other way to put it. You know, to see when, you know, I think as soon as a man is on the ground with his hands behind his back and in handcuffs, I don't care what that man did prior to that. It could have been anything. But the moment you have someone in handcuffs, that's it. That man is subdued. And to see that what happened in with George Floyd's case, that just makes, there's no excuse whatsoever. Those cops should be charged and tried. You know, but we do have to look at everything on a case by case basis. We do have, when I say case by case, the biggest problem that we have in our system is not necessarily bad cops, because, you know, not all cops are bad. We know that. You know, what we have is a problem, a criminal justice system that is not fair. The criminal justice system is supposed to be blind. We know that it's not blind. It makes no sense that Black and brown men are incarcerated much more at a higher rate than anyone else. You know, what is it? We have to fund it. We have, our public defender's office are grossly underfunded. You know, the state has to do a much better job at funding a public defender's office to make sure that people have a voice, that have a defense. You know, why is it that when you have money, you can get the best attorneys, but yet my community doesn't have access to those same attorneys? This is something that needs to be fixed and needs to be addressed. And Jackie, I agree. It is a criminal justice issue that we need to look at, a comprehensive approach at criminal justice. Economics, the economics of our minority communities, make sure that they have economic opportunities. Yes, everyone says everyone has an opportunity, but no, our communities, our minority communities are starting off 4 or 5 feet, 10 steps behind, if not 30 steps behind. They do have the same opportunities, but we need to make sure we put the resources in the right places to we can help and make sure that people can prosper.
And then I'm gonna have to interrupt you there. Time is up on that question. So Adrian, I ask you, are you in favor of establishing and funding a proposed civilian police oversight panel?
Yes, I am. We do need some type of oversight over our current, over police. I also do think that situations like this can often be, because I am a big supporter of our first responders. I highly appreciate all the work they do on a daily basis. I myself, for the most part, had general positive experiences with them. However, we do need to work with our police officers and make sure that we start weaning out the ones that aren't fit for the job. Because often enough, we find the ones that are the provocateurs of these situations often have a history of these same violations or of similar violations or prior investigations. I'm not saying that we need to be investigating everybody, no, because we know things happen on the job and we have to support our first responders. However, we need to make sure that if somebody has 3, 4 violations of similar situations, we need to make sure that that's being looked at. And I believe we need to support a lot of our nonprofit organizations, which are really going out there and fighting. And there's working with a lot of local defense attorneys who are honestly doing a lot of good pro bono work, even recently, trying to deal with, get a lot of the protesters out in situations where they are peaceful protesters. Now, albeit the issues with the protests, but we need to make sure that we're supporting the community and we're working with the police, not against them. At the end of the day, this is a community and we need to work together.
But what policy changes do you intend to champion in order to address those cases, those particular cases of brutality in your district? Adrian.
Well, it really just begins by sitting down and talking with police officers. You can push the policy all you want, but sadly, in the way we currently live at times, a lot of issues will become politicized. And one side might shift into one thing and change the conversation. No, the real conversation that needs to be had is with the police department and with the communities, and make sure that we can come to an understanding. For example, gun violence. You'd be surprised how much gun violence we could reduce if we had a county gun buyback, no questions asked. If you find a gun, because sometimes people, you don't know what's happening in your life, and sometimes people won't give up their relatives. So if we can have a county buyback of guns with no questions asked, I'm pretty sure even that alone would reduce the gun violence. Other things we can do is like just putting simple lights in a lot of places of badly lit areas, which is kind of absurd. But there's some quick, simple things that we can do in regards to policy that everyone could fundamentally agree on and we can work together as opposed to just trying to do radicalized ideas to try to shift what's currently going on. We need to work as a community forward. And I think that really comes out with involving everybody and making sure the community feels safe. And that begins by communication.
So Adrian talked about a dialogue between the community and police. Renee, the question to you is the same as I had to Adrian. What policy changes would you champion in order to address those cases of police brutality?
Look, Jackie, I think first is we talk about training. You know, we do have to look at the training of some of our police officers. One of the things, well, let me take a step back. One of the things that I always fought for in Tallahassee was for getting rid of criminal justice reform and really looking at the minimum mandatory sentencing guidelines that we have in place that I think are part of the reason you see a lot of our Black and brown men that are ending up in jail. But before we go there, what we can do at the county level, we need to have a comprehensive look at a comprehensive approach. We have to bring the public defender's office in with the state attorney's office and our police department and our elected officials and our community leaders to have these conversations, because it can't just be about the police. It has to be about the community as well. You know, we have a lot of these different programs in place. So we have the community policing programs that we have in place. We have to build off of that. We have to be able to have better de-escalation training, make sure that every police officer goes through a robust de-escalation training program, as well as a mental health and substance abuse program, so they are able to identify when someone is having a mental health crisis or have a substance abuse issue, and make sure that they are not criminalized for that. And I think when we come together as a community and have these conversations, and not having in a vacuum, that we bring all the issues together and we stop trying to point the finger as to whose fault is it, but how can we work together as a community to resolve the issue, then that's when we can have a true system. And then look, honestly, here in Miami-Dade County, there has been issues, but I think we all can feel very proud about the police department that we have, both in Dade County and many of our jurisdictions, where we don't see those major abuses that we see in other communities. Has there been abuses? Absolutely, but not to that degree, and we need to work on those. But we have to be proud of our community and our police officers that we have here. For the most part, they've done a good job, and I'm proud of what our community, how we've responded to the protest and the protest of George Floyd. So, but there's a lot of things that can be done, but we have to do it together as a community, not in a silo.
Okay, let's move on now to school safety. We can all also agree that that is an important part of our society to keep our children safe. So in the wake of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting tragedy, what policies do you support to keep children safe at school? Something that we depend on, the safety of our children at their school. So I start with you, Renee.
That is an issue that we're always going to be grappling with and fighting with. How do we keep our children safe? And I'll tell you this, Jackie, I have made a career fighting for mental health issues, fighting for mental health funding. We passed Senate Bill 12 in Tallahassee to reform the mental health system, that we had to integrate the mental health system in this community. And I say this because, and that's part of the reason, one of the main reasons that I'm running for the county commission is so we could continue to have that conversation on mental health. The common denominator that we have in all school shootings, most school shootings, a big majority of school shootings, is a mental health diagnosis. They had a mental health issue, or the lack of a mental health diagnosis. What we need to start doing, instead of talking about whether we arm teachers or take teachers away or fortify our schools to the point that they can feel like children are in prison, make sure that the mental health system that we have in this community is a mental health system that everyone has access to. And when we can start identifying individuals and students at the school, we can have mental health counselors, have in every school, and not only have the access for the student, but for the family members, then we're going to start seeing a shift in the public safety in our safety in our schools. I think we start off with there instead of starting off with arming or disarming teachers or fortifying our schools. I think it's more of a mental health crisis, a mental health issue, or a lack of attention to mental health. And I think that's what we should start doing first.
Adrian, what policies do you support to keep our children safe in the schools, specifically in District 13?
So I think that begins with more funding for schools. We see this with time. Classroom sizes keep getting bigger and bigger. The bigger a classroom size gets, the less individual time kids get with a teacher. As this time starts getting smaller and smaller, and teachers spend less one-on-one time with children, this is where mental health issues really start to spur. And if they're not caught on early on, it could lead to some sad tragedies, as we've seen in the past. So I'm a big supporter of helping support our school. We need to fund our schools. I don't think cops should really have any place inside of school. I don't see anything wrong with them being limited to outside the school in case of an emergency, but I don't see any reason why kids should have to go to school and see a cop in their campus at all times. They can be around as a precaution, but ultimately, I think this comes down to funding our schools and making sure kids get the one-on-one time to be able to get caught, to be able to see those mental issues early on, and so they can get attention early on. Because if not, then sadly, sometimes people have too much things going on. In Miami-Dade specifically, there's no one who does not work a full-time job and possibly have to do a side job as well to get by. In all this time at work, sometimes they're not realizing that their children are having issues and they might not be able to catch on to this. However, our schools are with our children 8 hours a day, every Monday through Friday. So we need to make sure that they have the adequate resources and the help to be able to have, for example, special needs assistants or specialists at schools to be able to help students with this, and not just somebody who's gonna, for example, protect the school and make sure that there's no loss. No, we need people who are actually gonna take care of the children and recommend the proper treatment. And
Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt you there because the time is up, and we only have time for one more question, and I do want to get this one in because it's very important, and that, of course, is affordable housing, and which has become a big problem here in South Florida. And before COVID-19, experts estimated, I think that it was 250,000 households in Miami-Dade were at risk of falling into poverty, and some even into homelessness. As a result of the pandemic now, many are unemployed, as we all know, and are unable to pay their mortgage. So what would you do to prioritize affordable housing for these households? I'll begin with you, Adrian.
So I think this is an issue that really comes down to ultimately the general price that houses are taking in Miami. The market keeps going up, but the jobs aren't paying adequately enough to equal out the difference. This is an issue that ultimately we need to start with working in zoning laws. If we are constructing new lands to make developments, let's try to get in more multi-home livings. But even then, multi-home households also bring the issue of increased traffic. So this is a strategy that needs to be incorporated properly, so we don't just create hot zones, low income communities. We need to make sure that we spread this out and make sure that that housing in general is not unattainable, which is sadly an issue that more and more are seeing, and more are coming to the realization that that's something that they're going to face soon enough because they're already in the process of losing their homes. They might not be getting evicted right now, but they're already getting that 6 month letter saying, hey, you haven't been paying your mortgage. Please know you have a lien held against you. So that's the reality a lot of people are facing right now. So that's a complex issue, and many will just say it's just create new homes. There's no black and white answer. That's really a complex issue that you have to work with. You have to work with everyone and see where we need to create those homes and make sure we don't just bombard an area to change how the cultural background is of that area, but more so spread it out so everyone has attainable, affordable living.
It is a complex issue, and I ask you now, Renee, what would you do to prioritize affordable housing in your district?
Jackie, it is a complex issue, but there's no complex issue that we can't address. When we look at the issue and we see the market people are being priced out of their homes, I think it's not just about it's about their careers and their jobs, correct? And I think one of the things that we can start doing to address that short-term issue is making sure, now because of COVID, we see how many people have lost their jobs. I think this is a great opportunity to retrain the workforce, to use a private career colleges to make sure that people can change their careers or their professions, come out, and encourage the younger people that are not going to go to the four-year university. We have to stop thinking of the university system that everyone's going to be forced to a four-year university system. You know what? A lot of people start down that process and it's just not for them. Let's make sure that when they graduate from high school, they all have some type of skill set that they can put to work immediately. That's one thing that we can start doing in our communities, to start addressing the issue of people trying to losing their jobs. When you talk about affordable housing, I think we can't talk about affordable housing without talking about workforce housing and making sure that we have and market rate housing. We have to start building more communities. I agree with Adrian that we could integrate communities together. We should not put everyone affordable housing, just one affordable housing building completely out there. I think we need to make sure that we have mixed living communities, that we see some of those projects that we see them coming in Dade County now, and I applaud them. They're doing a really good job. I think we have to give some incentives to make sure that we can keep on encouraging the growth and use of those dollars for mixed use housing.
Okay, so that was the last question of the forum. So now you are each going to have 90 seconds to give a closing statement. We already know where you stand on some of the key issues in District 13, but now we want to get to know a little bit more about you, and you have the opportunity now with this closing statement. So Adrian, I'm going to give you the first dibs here to give your closing statement.
Well, thank you everyone for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be able to speak out the issues that I've heard countless times again, spoken by our constituents. Sadly, the thing that we didn't get to discuss today is environmental protection, which is a big one also that's being affected in our communities. We see that with the rising sea level. The flooding issue isn't just a infrastructure issue, it's a rising sea level issue. I'm a big proponent for making Miami-Dade County the leader in the country in regards to zero carbon emissions. We have the most at stake for rising sea levels, not the rest of the country. So we need to be the pioneers pushing for the rest of the nation to do the same. We shouldn't just be waiting till the issue is out of hand before we start being proactive. Also, I just want to say that it's important that the community really starts voicing their opinions. We can't continue allowing those strong voices to control the conversation. We need everybody, every constituent, really to go out, to register to vote, and to make sure you're either registered to vote by mail or you go out election day. There is early voting. Look out for early voting. We need everyone's help to make sure we have a great turnout and we make sure that the community is represented properly. We can't continue with this whole monopolization of the conversation. We need to make sure that we have an answer that resolves everybody's needs. Although we may disagree, we can come to an understanding. And we need to make sure that we're pushing forward policies that work for everyone and not certain people. We also need people who
Adrian,
are going to do
the 90 seconds are up. I apologize, Renee.
Sorry.
Here's the floor to you.
Thank you, Jackie. And Adrian, thank you so much Adrian, thank you for being on this forum. And, it's great to meet you on this forum. But the reality is, I do agree with Adrian, we need to, in this community, we need to stop having a conversation of the polar extremes. The polar extremes are controlling the debate in every aspect of our society right now. In a civil society, we need all voices to be heard. And I think I have demonstrated that I have a track record that has demonstrated to be able to, as a Republican, to be able to talk to my Republican colleagues and listen to my Democrat colleagues and at least try to come up with a comprehensive solution. I think we need a more pragmatic approach. I think we need to elect individuals who are not only going to fight for their district, but they're going to look at the community, at the county as a whole. This idea of fiefdoms that we have created in this community, I think it has to come to an end. It's what are you going to give me for my district? What are you going to do for what are you going to do for mine? I think we need to stop having those conversations. I think we need to look at this community as one community, one Miami-Dade County. If we are going to make it, we're going to keep on moving this community forward. We have to address the issues of transportation. We have to address the issues of mental health and healthcare and access to healthcare in this community. And that's why I'm running. I think I can bring I think I bring the experience that I have in Tallahassee and a pragmatic approach to governing, because I truly believe that, you know, we have to continue the economic progress of this community, but we shouldn't sacrifice the social needs of our community. And I will continue to be that voice. I've said it in Tallahassee. I believe in being the government should be the voice for the voiceless, and that's who I will be.
And we're going to leave it there. Thank you both for joining us on this forum, our Miami, the People's Forum, because it really is our Miami. Former State Senator Rene Garcia,
Thank you.
Jimenez. Good luck to you. Once again, thank you, and thank you to the Miami
Thank you,
Foundation.
Thanks for
Great,
having
thank
us.
you all.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.